listen to you, but you're going to listen to me as well. So three strike rule interruption, I will enforce that. As I've said earlier, this is a pop-up live. I have scheduled lives on the weekends because that's the only time I can. I am at work right now, so if I leave abruptly, that's because something's going on, but it's a slow day at work because it is the weekend. So yeah, Kenzie, coming on, establish communication with me, and then let's have a conversation.
How's it going?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's your question?
So I'm wondering if you can have a. Do you think abortion should be illegal?
Yes.
Can you make an argument for legality without using religion?
For legality without using God as a basis? No.
Correct. So why should we why should anyone who is not a Christian then really care?
Oh, why should they care? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so are
I
you saying that you want our society to have laws that are structured through Christianity?
that are structured through Christianity? No, I don't believe so.
Yeah. Then how can you
Yeah, I don't.
say abortion should be illegal if you don't have a non-secular argument
Sure, certainly, because it
or a
doesn't
secular argument?
require. Right, so it doesn't require, secularity, if that's a word. It doesn't require it to make a vote on something. So, for example, our word, right, that would be something that I would say, well, yeah, because they're made in the image of God, of course they have value and they have um, uh, bodily rights because of that, right? So, but it's still illegal, which I'm glad it is illegal, but I don't have I can vote for it based on that. And I think that is the ultimate reason to be against any real evil that goes on in the world, because without that basis, their morality is simply subjective. So, yeah, the same way in the laws, no, you don't have to agree with me, but I'm going to vote based on first the how Christ tells us to love people, because I have to operate in that no matter what. And sometimes culture just kind of gets in the way of loving people according to how Christ calls us to, and we have to cast a vote and do something. So yeah, I
So
guess
I'm
that
glad
would be
that
my big.
I'm sorry, I thought you were
Go ahead.
finished.
No, yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
I'm glad you brought up kind of like bodily rights, because that's why you recognize that
Mm-hmm.
our word should be illegal. Like, what do you think in terms of the bodily rights of the pregnant person? Why do you think they should be forced to sustain pregnancy and give birth?
Yeah, for sure. And these are good questions. Thank you. So yeah, they definitely should. And it's so interesting, and I always bring this up. It's so interesting to see the difference between how both sides word things. You'll say forced to give birth. I'll say, well, no, it's preventing someone from killing another human being. So
I
in
can
this
define
world, we
force if you
have.
wish.
Well, hang on. In this world, we have to come into the world via mother. We don't have a choice. Um, so I just like in this world as humans, we have to move. We have to move. So there are certain laws we put in place to prevent the unjust stopping of our movement or the impeding of our movement. In the same way, I believe it logically flows that we should also have laws that protect us from something that we must do, which is come into the world via mother. So that's, I guess, where the logic of, hey, this is a human, right, made in the image of God, has value outside of our own mind. So we can't just, kill them based on, what we want. So, yeah, I guess it's one of those
So,
my right,
is
your
this
right.
like a naturalistic fallacy?
Go for it.
Is this like a naturalistic fallacy that essentially you're saying that's because what her body is designed to do and what happens in nature that we should force women to give birth?
I'm not so because something happens in nature that um, I'm not sure it's fallacious, but I've never heard of a naturalistic fallacy.
Yeah, because we interrupt. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say because we interrupt biological, or excuse me, natural occurrences all the time.
Hang on. The naturalistic fallacy is an informal logical fallacy which argues that if something is natural, it must be good. It's closely related to the is ought fallacy when someone tries to infer what ought to be done from what is. Yeah, okay, so yeah, it definitely wouldn't be then because it does naturally happen. But remember, and I believe I said this even in my response. Thank you. I've never heard of this fallacy before, but yeah, now I know. Um, but I even said in my response that we're dealing with an image bearer of God here, who was made in His image and therefore has value and worth outside of human opinion. So it goes beyond just because what is. It's what they are and who created them, what they call them to be. So it's not only because it naturally happens, it's why it naturally happens. It's because they're made in the image of God and have intrinsic value outside of our own opinion.
I can concede that the fetus is a human worth of value and morality. I just don't think that you can make an argument to why the fetus would have a right to the mother's body.
Well, I can't. Well, I believe I did, but making an argument and convincing somebody is not always the same thing. So I guess so. Do you have another question?
So you agree that the fetus does not have a right to the mother's body?
That he or she doesn't have a right? No, I believe they do. Yeah, I believe
where does that right come from?
The fact that they're God, again, they have value outside of our opinions. Therefore, we can't unalive them. That's another human there. Yeah, so I think it's as clear as our call not to murder.
So if I were in need of blood, could I take your blood without consent?
I'm not yawning at you, I promise. That was.
I wouldn't take it personally if you were. It's okay.
No, I wouldn't. Trust me. No, you could not my blood without consent. No.
Why not? I mean, it's my life, and my life has value.
Right, it does.
And I need it to live.
Yeah, for sure. Just because you can't, because I have my own rights in my body as well. So you can't just be taking my blood without my consent.
So why can't we apply that same energy to pregnancy?
Yeah, we can't because it's not the same. So in the case of you and me, I'm outside of my mother's womb, right? You have not. I do not have to come into the world. So, are you saying that? So, in this scenario that you presented, which one of us is the mother and which one of us is the one in need of blood? I probably already know, but I just want to make sure.
I don't have to make it like a parental relationship because essentially what I think you're doing is just kind of special pleading, is just giving the fetus extra rights that you give no one else.
I'm not sure it's special pleading at all, actually. See, in this case that we're talking about, again, I'm outside of the mother. So certainly there are certain rights that should be applied because of the vulnerable position that you're in. You are a otherwise healthy human growing inside of your mother who otherwise, unless medical complication happens, will come into the world, right? So this isn't a scenario where someone outside of the womb, right, who is not still growing within a mother, who doesn't need a mother, is asking for like a blood transfusion or a kidney or something. So the child, yes, deserves special rights, special care. I believe children deserve special protections. I believe there are certain laws that give them that as well.
I'm sorry.
If
How
you're
is
a
that not
minor for
special
certain
pleading
things,
then?
hang on, whoa, hang on. I'm gonna make that strike one. It's just happened too many times. So yeah, but I was done after that. But yeah.
Okay. So how is that not special pleading then when you literally said they have special protections and special rights?
Uh, no, and I believe okay. Fallacy when one cites something as an exception to a general or universal principle without justifying the special. Oh, okay, so okay, yeah, so it would be special pleading. Thank you for presenting all of these fallacies for me to look up because I didn't know that. So it would be
You're
special.
welcome. I have to say that's the first time someone's ever thanked me for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. This is not a. I do not have debate bro lives at all. I don't like them. I think like they're not productive at all. But yeah, without justifying the special exception. Yeah, so I think it just comes down to because there's a second part to the special pleading thing that I'm just now looking up. You do that without justifying the special exception. I just believe that you don't believe that I justified the special exception. I do believe I have justified it by saying that yes, they because they are in a specifically, uniquely, once in a lifetime vulnerable position of coming into the world via a mother. So it's not special pleading because the justification, because the special exception has been justified. You just don't accept it, as far as I can see, and that's fine.
I could argue that me needing a blood transfusion is like a rare disease, which is special, and therefore I have special circumstances, and I should get your blood because your blood is the only blood that would save me. So
You could
that's kind of
argue
my
that.
point is when we are talking kind of like about bodily rights and legality. I just don't think that you can make a legal argument to why the fetus or the embryo is deserving of an extra right.
Well, again, I believe I did. You don't believe I did, but you can argue that it's just not the same as a pregnancy. And like, again, this is a special circumstance where the child has.
I'm
Hang on,
okay. Sorry.
hang on. Don't interrupt. Don't interrupt. This, I promise you, I'll have the time to reply. But this is a special circumstance where the child has to come into the world via a mother, and there is no possible other way. In the case of this, unless you do like a C-section, like at some time during the pregnancy. But in the case of you needing blood, like we have stores of blood. You technically don't need it from another person. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But this is a case wherein it's one of those again. Your your rights end where mine begin. Nobody has a people have a right to life, but nobody has the right not to die, right? So in this case, we are taking an otherwise because for some there's something that's happened that's put you in a position where you need the blood transfusion, right? Or you need blood from somebody. In the case of abortion, we are actively trying to kill another human. So this is different because now another legal consideration is coming into play, and that is murder. And we can't be doing that. Ultimately justified by the fact that again we're made in the image of God. So again, I believe it's justified. I just believe we disagree on
So the reason, yeah, let me break that down a little bit. Are you familiar a lot with rights? Do you know a lot about rights?
No.
Have you heard the term positive and negative rights?
I've heard it. I don't know what it is.
All right, so positive rights are essentially things that you require from society or require from another person, like the right to health care would be a positive right, where negative rights are essentially rights that you just possess. You don't need anyone to give them to you, like the right to life would be a negative right. And so when we look at the difference between positive and negative rights, essentially with a negative right, you're just asking that no one infringe upon that right and take what you already possess. However, I would argue in an abortion that the mother is simply removing the positive right to life because the embryo is in fact on life support. And she has no obligation to provide the embryo with nutrients and a uterus. So it actually would not be a violation of the fetus's right to life because it
Well,
is in fact a negative right. That's the
okay.
difference between abortion and murder.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I would say that um, anything that would justify the killing um, of another human who has done nothing wrong, despite whatever man wants to come up with positive or negative rights, however they want to define them, would ultimately have to come subject under the law of God, because there is a law that goes above the law, and that's God. So ultimately, and this is why my ultimate thing is abortions. These are wrong because they're antithetical to the heart of Christ, who loved us so much that he died for us. So yeah, in the case
I would.
of abortion, hang on, almost done.
Sure.
In the
Sorry.
so in the case of abortion,
Could you just like tell me when you're done? Because I think you're done, and that's why I interject.
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's fine. In the case of abortion, no problem whatsoever. In the case of abortion, we have again a innocent human life that has done nothing wrong, and now making special. We're making special rules around their value, devaluing them, dehumanizing them. In fact, to make this special case where an innocent human.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you again, but sometimes you make so many points, it's hard for me to go back and address each one, which I would really like to. So when it comes to a fetus being innocent, how is a fetus innocent?
Yeah, so they haven't done anything worthy of death according to the standard that God has put in place.
So when it comes to like guilt and innocence, you have to have the capacity to be either. And I would argue that a fetus or an embryo does not have like the capacity to be guilty. So therefore it cannot be innocent, that it would just be amoral because it's not a moral agent.
No.
And I would also argue
no.
that it is actually infringing upon the mother's right to bodily autonomy. And since it is the original rights aggressor, the mother has the gentlest means necessary to essentially take back her rights and restore her bodily autonomy. And then I would like to also understand your take on dehumanizing, because I don't understand what element. Like I've even told you, like I will give your fetus, your embryo, personhood, value as equal rights as you or I.
Well, you wouldn't actually, because you would say that the mother would be able to unalive them, but you probably wouldn't make that same case for like a newborn or something like that. So I don't think we would.
There's no bodily autonomy issue in that instance.
I'm gonna make that strike two, please. This is a very good conversation. I'm glad you're on here. So let's just listen to each other. But yeah, I don't believe you would, because you wouldn't give them that right to life when it came to pregnancy. But yeah, again, it goes back to who calls this human valuable, right? Who says that they were innocent? Who says that they don't like the shedding of the blood of the innocent? It's the one who created them, the potter. So it ultimately goes back to what does he view about life? Like, what does he say about life? And ultimately, what was his ultimate answer to death? Was it using death as a tool to do whatever we want? Or was his answer to death to send his son on a cross to die for us so that we would not die but have eternal life and have relationship with him? Now, the highest call that Christ gives us, and this is the answer to it, is to the basis of all of the Ten Commandments is to love your neighbor as yourself and to love God, right? So when we look at these children and we're saying when we look at these little humans, these unborn humans, and we're saying, okay, well, we have to have, some secular reasoning behind, why we can't unalive them. Like we have to have some secular basis for why, we can't unalive them. A baby, I think most people would agree, a newborn does not have the capacity to break a law. They doesn't have the capacity to do it, but we wouldn't unalive them based on that. So again, when we start down that road, it gets very illogical very fast. The only logical, reasonable position to have that satisfies both like logically and um, um, well, that satisfies logically is to take it back to God, and the only way to get to know God is through a relationship with Jesus Christ. But I hope that answers it.
No, I actually disagree with a lot of your points. I find the Bible to be very misogynistic, which is why
Okay.
I think it kind of puts these burdens upon women and makes them have like these societal roles to where they're only seen as a mother.
Okay.
So, would you say that when it comes to abortion and kind of like the killing of a 1 year old, do you realize that the 1 year old is not like hooked up to the mother as in terms of life support?
No, the oh, okay. So just yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I meant to address that too. Like, it's not the same as a life support. Certainly not, because
It
the
is
child.
because,
I really, I'll make that a warning. I really don't want to.
well, I feel that you
But
kind of
child,
interrupted me because I asked you a yes or no question and you
wait,
didn't
what?
do
I
yes or
don't.
no. So I tried to clarify myself.
Hang on, hang on. I'll make that a warning, and I'll explain something because we're definitely disagreeing on that. Someone saying that they've asked a yes or no question and then trying to hold someone to that and calling that an interruption, I believe is kind of illogical. If the person doesn't believe it's a yes or no question and they answer more fully, it's not an interruption, like by definition. But hang on, hang on. I really don't want to end this, but I'm very firm on that rule. But yeah, it's not the same as like life support as someone, because when we think of life support, like we think of someone like they're in trouble. They've gotten, like, if you and me go on life support, something's gone wrong. Like something has tragically gone wrong, and the life support is preventing the failure, preventing total failure of our organs and the things that give us life. In the case of the like umbilical cord and a child growing, the child is growing. The child isn't like merely being prevented from dying. The child is actively growing. A person outside the womb on life support is not actively growing. They're being prevented from dying. So it's really not the same. But in the language used there, it seems to like suggest that that is what's going on. But maybe I misheard you. Go ahead.
That is what's going on. I mean, if we were just to remove the fetus from the womb, would it survive?
So depending on the stage, because it is
Prior to
a
viability.
fetus from hang on, hang on. So depending on the stage, because it is a fetus until birth, until it's a newborn, it's still medically considered a fetus. And again, I would only be circling back to what I said earlier about life support. It's not, if you and me go on life support, we are not actively growing. We are merely being prevented from dying. In the case of a pregnancy, you are not merely being prevented from dying. You are actively growing within yourself. Like you are actively growing. You are alive, and your cells are growing into a stage that can be delivered. So it's not the same, but I think it might be something that we have to agree to disagree on.
I don't think it's an agree to disagree thing because if I were to say prior to viability, so prior to the 24th week, we know that most, or even if I take it to an embryo 8 weeks or prior, if we remove it from the mother's womb, what will happen?
It will most likely die, I'm guessing.
So, how is that not a form of life support?
Oh, okay.
Because
So
doesn't it
it's
need
not.
it to sustain its existence?
Wait. Okay. So it's not a, it is a form, I guess. If you want to switch it and say like, yeah, it's a type of life support, yeah, true. I believe I was very specific in my response. I said, if you and me go on life support, right, we're being prevented from dying. We're not.
Yes, I know you've told me
So
twice. I
I
don't need a
think
third explanation.
I think the distinction that's being missed here is that the child is actively growing. You're right. If it gets taken off, then it will be in trouble. Unlike you and me, who would go on life support because something has gone wrong, right? Them being on the umbilical cord inside the mother is a necessary process for their growth. Us being outside and on life support is only a prevention of our death. So there's another layer that we have to consider on top of it just being a form of life support. It is also the path by which we grow and come into the world. So it's life growing and not just death preventing. I guess
I
that's a good way.
am really trying to have a conversation with you, but I feel when I try to engage in discussion, you just kind of go on long tangents or monologues and don't really answer direct statements. Would you say that it is immoral to turn off the machine for someone who is on life support?
So I'm going to answer that previous comment first. You can believe that all you want, but what I like to do is give a full breadth of an answer so that way the person can understand where I'm coming from. And I believe that's how you have a discussion rather than a debate. But on to your question. Um, yeah, if someone is on life support, that's a tough situation. It depends on the situation. But if they will not otherwise recover from whatever tragedy is causing them to die. Again, this is unlike a pregnancy because in a pregnancy, in abortion specifically, since that's what we're talking about, someone is going in and causing the death. Like so, the reason that the person would be on life support would be more applicable to the abortion than the life support itself, if that's where you're about to go with this. But yeah, in the case of life support, depending on the situation, if the person won't recover, yeah, sure, perhaps.
Then it would be moral to turn off the machine. So if someone is brain dead and is hooked
It
to
could
life support, it could be a moral action to turn off the machine.
it could be, yes.
I would like a definitive answer. Is it or is it not?
That is it could be is a definitive answer. Ma'am, okay, so the world does not always work in yes or no's. You can believe that, but sometimes
Well,
it
we're
doesn't.
talking
And
morality.
oh, hang on. Because it's such a good conversation, I've let you go with a lot of warnings, but yeah, it could be right. If someone were to come in and just jack it off, that's a situation wherein, no pun intended, that's a situation wherein it would be amoral because they've done it without any consideration of whether or not like the person will recover. But if the person won't recover, then yeah, it.
Great. So the only thing that separates a brain dead person on life support and a embryo inside the womb is potential. Correct?
Wait, the only. uh, no, it doesn't. So a brain dead person on life support has come into a situation wherein they have, and yeah, I'm taking what you say intellectually serious, but I do believe that there is a bit of dishonesty going on here. A brain dead person that is on life support is in a situation that, through some cause, they're now on life support. So something has caused them to be on life support, either an
That's
accident or
irrelevant.
that. In the case of an embryo, please don't interrupt again. In the case of an embryo, you have an otherwise alive and growing human. It's not about potential. It's not potential life. They are already living. They are already growing. There's no potential there. It's the same thing as like a newborn having potential to be a 3-year old. They're already human, right? They're already living. There's already life there. So the only thing, it's not irrelevant because the only thing we are considering here is life, right? So in the case of a brain person who's gotten into an accident or something, right? That is not the process that they're under is not life giving. Again, it's merely death preventing. So I guess that's the best way I can explain it. Go ahead.
So, I think that you just talked about an irrelevant point because when we look at the difference between someone who is brain dead and hooked to a machine and an embryo in the womb, if we essentially remove their life support, the same occurrence happens. Why is that?
What's the
Why
difference
do they
between
both
an
die?
embryo? Go ahead.
Why do they die when the life support is removed?
So this is the answer to, well, hang on, because I know what you'll probably say after that, and it'll probably go down a rabbit hole. The person dies when they were unhooked from when they're unhooked from life support because of whatever caused them to be put in the situation where they needed to be on life support. That's what will, and that's not a dodge. That is what will go on the coroner's report. It will not be unhooked from life support. The cause of death will be whatever put them
That's
on the
not what I'm
life.
asking.
No, yes, ma'am, please. The
No,
cause of
I
death,
find this
the
format
cause of,
of kind of
I tried, guys. I tried. Y'all saw me. Y'all saw me right there. I gave her more warnings than anybody I have ever given on this live. Let me tell you, I gave her more warnings than anybody I've ever given on this live before. The cause, she asked me, when you unhook somebody,